Good morning. I'm Deborah Wynn Smith, the President and CEO of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness. So it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome you to this third in the series of competitiveness conversations across America. And I want to thank very much, of course, President Chang, Director Kearns, and Chancellor Jones for being our hosts and our leaders for this very exciting conversation. And I just want to share a little bit that when we first started talking about these, and I'll comment on that in a moment, I did take the liberty of asking Professor Chang, then President Chang, President Chang, would you be one of the first hosts? And he said yes, and it's very prescient and good because I have to say we already have 2025 completely booked for conversations and into 2026. So we're really thrilled to be here at Purdue, and thank you for your leadership, Professor Chang. And I have to say that today, hearing, about the Indiana-Illinois corridor, maybe we need to think about the triple I, the triple helix, I to the third power, all of that's going on. So I'm going to ask you all about that when we start our great panel. But first, I want to say, that we have three tremendous leaders here. President Chang has really emerged in a very short time as one of the strongest leaders in our higher education system in the country, and we know how Purdue has been at the heart of engineering and advanced manufacturing and agriculture, but now has really moved into these very, very significant transformative technologies that are reshaping our world in partnership with government, with industry, with academia, and the national labs. So thank you again, President Chang, for your leadership. And Director Paul Kearns, who I've had the pleasure to know and work with for many, many years as the distinguished director of Argonne, he really has established Argonne in its storage legacy into the next generation of being one of our crown jewels in the national laboratory system, doing research in energy, environmental sustainability, advanced computing, semiconductors, quantum, the list goes on, and bioscience, and having some of the most important user facilities in the world that attract industry and other universities and labs to work on very, very cutting-edge problems that have a huge impact on our economic competitiveness and national security. And Chancellor Jones, you are so renowned for your work in higher education. You've elevated the University of Illinois Champaign's standing as one of our great land-grant universities, but also, of course, in the frontier field of quantum and ag and so many areas. So thank you for your leadership. I want to thank all of you who've come from this very exciting triple helix corridor, but also from other parts of the country, including council members, and just share with you that about 5 years ago, the council's leadership identified several emerging megatrends, some of which we hadn't really anticipated, and that we noticed an intractable structural challenge that was underway, and that was the growth in our productivity. We did a very important report a few years ago with Gallup called No Growth, the Long-Term Decline in U.S. Productivity. And we all know that increases in productivity deliver our standard of living and our prosperity. And so, coupled to what can we do to unleash a new wave of productivity in our nation, and recognizing, of course, this simultaneous emergence and convergence of multiple technology revolutions, we developed the National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontier. And I'm delighted that our leaders are all members of that commission, including President Tim Killeen of the University of Illinois System, who could not be with us today. But the purpose of this commission is really to identify the challenges, the opportunities, and then the policy agenda, the recommendations that will enable us to unleash a new wave of productivity, to increase the prosperity for all our citizens and ensure our economic competitiveness globally and our national security. And one of the main topics that emerged in the first phase of our work through our report, Innovate, the Next Wave of Innovation, Competing in the Next Economy, was that we realized that not all Americans are participating in the geographic reach and intensity of our innovation capacity. Many communities and individuals across our nation are not part of our innovation ecosystem, and this limits our collective capacity and capabilities for this innovation imperative that will really underpin the jobs, the standard of living for our future. So in addition to the traditional coastal innovation hubs, and yes, great parts of the country, such as Chicago, very much at the heart of our industrial might, and other places as well, we decided that we needed to understand what's going on in the rest of the country and really help catalyze and mobilize this new journey for the next phase of innovation. And that's really behind our competitiveness conversations across America. We also know, of course, that learning, replicating, and scaling all of these issues is critical for the nation at large. And with our federal government investing billions into technology hubs, regional innovation engines, concerns about supply chains, things we'll talk about, the time is right to carry the Council's agenda across our nation. I'm not going to say too much about our three topics of chips, qubits, and molecules because our distinguished leaders will address that. But I think the fact that we chose that topic underscores the incredible power of convergence, superconvergence, and how it's not just the individual technologies, but how we meld them together that are going to give us our competitive advantage and our ability to scale from startup to large enterprises and team with the large corporations that are at the heart of our industrial enterprise right now. So with that, I'm going to sit down and ask my great panelists the first question. So I'm going to start with you. Professor President Chang. You have been at Purdue not too many years, but you're already a Boilermaker. What attracted you to come to this part of the country, and what do you really see as the core assets that you've built upon now?
Well, thank you, Deborah. First of all, I grew up in California, then I worked in New Jersey for 14 years. My kids were all born there in Princeton, New Jersey. I'll tell you two reasons that 7.5 years ago, I thought this is the best opportunity for me to come to West Lafayette, Indiana. The first is Mitch Daniels, the outstanding and long-standing president that had the Daniels decade. So I came in the middle of the Daniels decade. Two is the incredible strength of the college that I had the honor to have a chance to lead and serve, and that is Purdue's College of Engineering. Now I serve the entire university, not just one college. There's a great successor of mine, first Mark Lundstrom, and then Arvind Raman, who are the deans since. So I'm not doing that job. I'm just saying 7.5 years ago, that's another reason. Excellence at scale, that is something incredible. The ethos of public land-grant institution for the future of so many Americans, that's a reason. And now we look back and say, hey, we're winning. People didn't think we could win. We're the underdog, right? While Chancellor Jones led Big Ten and now leading AAU, and he's seen a lot of these underdog fights, and people don't think that we can perhaps compete against the coast, against the big cities out there, and I love them all, but look, we are able to keep it focused and keep winning. Just one data point, there were 3 national hubs competitions last year. One is the Hydrogen Hub, one is the Regional Tech Hub, and one is the Microelectronic Commons Hub. 3 national competitions. It's just like football, basketball, baseball, right? And this region, and Purdue being part of all 3 winning teams, this region from central to northwest Indiana, inclusive of Illinois and Chicagoland, the only stretch of land in the land of the free to win 3 out of 3 competitions. And each is a 10% probability. So I don't do Monday morning math, but I think something, assuming they're independent events, is a very small number to win 3 out of 3. So look, let's keep winning.
Great. Director Kearns, let me ask you to build on that. You have been in the National Laboratory System for most of your career. You're also a Boilermaker, we've heard, know. Tell us a little bit about what's special in this corridor, and how does the National Lab and a great lab like Argonne, but also Fermilab, fit into this infrastructure?
Thank you very much, Deborah, for the question, and it's a real honor, a privilege to be part of today's conversation. Two institutions and a great organization that I'm really pleased to be associated with. You've already heard I'm a Purdue alum, Boilermaker through and through. Certainly grew up on a farm here in Indiana, much like Congressman Bart, so really excited to be back and have the opportunity to provide a few comments. And Argonne's got a strong collaboration really with Purdue. It's building over time, and really appreciate Karen's leadership in terms of making things happen in that regard. University of Illinois is one of the primary stewards of Argonne National Laboratory. Jay Walsh is here. Jay, along with President Clean, sits on the Argonne Board of Governors, and so we're really pleased to have the association, the collaboration there as well. And Deborah, you've been a fantastic personal coach and mentor for me over time, over several years, as you've suggested. It really benefited greatly. I think I would offer to barely build on a couple of comments that have already been made in terms of what's unique about the region. And we often talk in the National Laboratory System about really three fundamental characteristics of the national labs. And one is pivotal discoveries, the second one is pioneering leadership, and the third one is science at scale. And we've heard comment really today regarding all three of those really being part of the institutions represented on the stage, and really vital to really the economies in this region and our future as we work together to really make things happen. And so really exciting for us in that way. We talk about pivotal discoveries, and certainly there are many that we could speak to from the three institutions represented on the stage. And pioneering discoveries, you've heard, we often think about collaborations and partnerships in this context, and you've heard about that a bit already this morning. And then science at scale has been talked about in terms of excellence at scale. And we have the unique opportunity through the National Laboratory System to bring our national user facilities really to the collaboration in really the region itself with the advanced photon source. Purdue is outside of the state of Illinois, is the most active user of the advanced photon source at Argonne. And of course, we had the leadership computing facility with Aurora, our fantastic new exascale system at the university, really focused on AI and driving developments across many fields of science in terms of discovery and engineering associated with artificial intelligence. So a lot of good reason really for the labs to be excited. Fermilab's right there with us, so we can talk quantum. We have 4 national quantum research centers between the two states, and including one at Argonne called QNext and one at Fermilab. Really do fantastic work across many fields. So thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Paul. And we'll come back in more detail to some of the initiatives that you have mentioned. But let me turn to you, Chancellor, and share with us, a little bit of perspective on University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana and maybe the system, but also, of course, and we heard this from Congressman Baird, and we know Purdue is a player in this, and Argonne as well. Agriculture is our biggest industry, our largest exporter, and you're a powerhouse in that area as well.
Yes. This microphone is not working, because I guess I can use my professor voice if I still remember how to do that. I think good. Well, let me start by saying, first of all, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today, because this conversation itself, I think, is critically important to have, and it's critically important to remember how blessed we are, because this day, this whole place that we are now as a region didn't happen by happenstance. I think, lest we forget, we are blessed in a region that has more than 6 R1 universities that do cutting-edge research in this area and others. And as a plant physiologist, I got to throw a plug in there. I know we're not here to talk about the ag sector, as was alluded to, but that is the fastest growing sector in the state of Illinois, and one of the fastest growing technology sectors at my university. So we have these 6 R1 universities. We have these national labs that Paul has talked about and that we all participate in. And certainly we have no shortage of other higher education institutions that do research and do part of the innovation and the workforce development that's going to be absolutely critical component of this whole ecosystem. And we have research parks. I'd like to think that Purdue and University of Illinois have two of the finest research parks in the world, if not the country. I think the country, we're pretty safe on that.
I vote yes.
And because this is at the core of what we do to advance our research mission, but as well, how do we partner? And we're going to be talking a lot about partnering with the private sector to drive research and innovation and to supply the workforce that's needed. We're also blessed by our two universities and a couple of our colleagues across the state line where I live and work produce a very large part of the STEM workforce sector that is absolutely critically important to drive us to this point that we are today. And so I just think, given these assets, we have a real good opportunity. You know, everybody talks about silicon. At Urbana-Champaign, we talk about beyond silicon. And I certainly believe that if we continue to work together, we have a real opportunity to create research and innovation infrastructure for the 21st century and beyond, and that will be located squarely in this region. If we can start to think about beyond silicon and what that means for research and innovation. And I just think, folks, we have a real good opportunity here through all of these assets to turn the out-migration that we all suffer from. I know at Illinois, every time I go to Silicon Valley, I'm reminded you can't throw a rock down any street in Silicon Valley and not hit at least 3 or 4 University of Illinois graduates. We need to find a way to keep that talent home, and I think the topic that we are here to discuss today provides the best opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Mung, let's talk about some of these partnerships. Purdue has been very much a leader, certainly in my career, knowing what you've done in forging these industrial partnerships with academia and the labs. And what are some of the ingredients and the magic that makes these work? Why do you think you're attracting such tremendous investment and presence here in Lafayette that's again transforming your economy as well as producing incredible innovation?
Well, thank you, Deborah. And we'd love to hear your thoughts because you've been a leader for decades in exactly this space here. But, you know, partnership starts with those who are already on stage right now. For example, just earlier this morning, Dr. Karen Plout, our EVP for Research, signed a collaborative MOU with Dr. Paul Kearns in Oregon. Thank you, Paul. And the collaboration between UIUC and Purdue goes back well over a century. And in particular, our ag colleges and our engineering colleges have been working alongside each other, winning together in so many ways. I think there are two particular key elements here, Deborah. One is curated densification. So Robert mentioned this notion that, yes, we have research parks, and you need to have a curated densification within that research park. So at Purdue, we have the Purdue Research Park where SK Hynix is going to be and its entire supply chain that we are now onshoring right here to Purdue. And the other one is the Discovery Park District, which is walkable from campus. So imagine a student, she wakes up in the morning, she would turn left, go to Burke Nanotechnology Center and take her courses, and turn right in the afternoon after a 4 dining core lunch, then go to do a summer intern or a regular season co-op program with SK Hynix, right? Or with MediaTek as a design firm, or with IMAC, which is the outstanding European headquarter, now globally dominant consortium of innovation semiconductors. The opportunities for our students and faculty because of that co-location and densification, that is important. Now, we have a lot of land, which, by the way, doesn't mean it's cheap to acquire and build on those land. So we're always, space is at a premium. So lest any of our colleagues get the idea that we can just keep building free buildings. However, one downside of having a lot of land is that we may not have that densification in a curated manner that we need. So aerospace, because we have America's first universe-operated airport right here, right? Transportation logistics, then digital agriculture, then microelectronics. We look at those particular areas, and then we densify their connectivity tissue. And the second element, I think, is that we cannot try to be the best at everything out there in the world. We got to pick and choose and be strategic. You know, as Mitch once said, you know, strategy is defined by what you don't do at a given particular time. Now, you can try to live a long life and do a lot of things, but, you know, at a given time for an institution, you got to decide where's you're going to be your focus, and you have to double down on your strength. Between Illinois and Indiana, we have a lot of strength, but we cannot afford to diffuse too much. So that locality in topic corresponding to the locality of the physical space, coupled with carefully curated development of public-private partnership, I think is the key.
Robert, why don't you pick up on the public-private partnerships and how important, we know how important they are, but what are some of the challenges in putting these together and ensuring that both partners, and more than two partners, are getting the benefit and value?
Well, from our perspective, and I know folks in the state of Illinois are maybe a bit tired of me saying this, but I think most of the grand challenges we face as a society are too large and too complex for any one entity to solve alone. So you have to have these public-private partnerships to be able to drive to the best and I think the most sustainable solutions. And for the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, it's kind of been our way of thinking about the future. And I'll just give you a couple examples. And sometimes I think these public-private partnerships are going to take a little bit explanation to some of our faculty and staff and legislators who may not be accustomed. They're very accustomed to us competing on Saturdays and 8 o'clock on Thursday night, which I'm not crazy about that, but I know you might like it. But they're used to us competing as academic institutions and in sports, but there's not a very strong track record of these deep collaborations. But I can tell you, folks, that has to become more and more the norm of how we leverage our resources to solve these grand challenges. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. One is that must have been about maybe 5 years ago now, when Bob Zimmer, former president of the University of Chicago, God rest his soul, approached me about going to our state legislature to request $100 million to build what is now called the Chicago Quantum Exchange. And I can tell you, Bob was very clear and I was very clear that that was one area where we both had talented faculty, and we probably could go about doing this without each other, but it's that old axiom about going further by working together. And I can tell you, this is a good example of a public university and private university partnering. We went to the legislature, asked for $100 million, and I will bore you with the long detail, but it was the first time in my life where I got double what we've ever asked for. We got $200 million. Now, to come back to Urbana and try to explain that, you mean you're going to spend $100 million to build a laboratory at the University of Chicago? Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. Because I mention that because that's the embodiment, I believe, of where we are now and what we must do even more in the future if we are going to be the powerhouse in some of these new cutting-edge areas. And another example I'll just leave you with is something called Innovate Illinois. And I'll talk a little bit more about this if I get the opportunity. This is something that was started by our governor. The first time we've aligned all of the universities in the state, the business community in Chicago, the university's community college, to come together with one strategy for trying to be competitive as it relates to the CHIPS and science funding. And we've already been very, very successful. But the governor said this, and I believe it to be true. This is the first time in his knowledge where you've had all of these assets aligned together with a common strategy to drive research and innovation.
Maybe you should continue a little bit on the quantum exchange, because I'm going to ask everybody their role in that, and this is one of our big themes, and it's a hot topic here and around the world for obvious reasons.
Well, the Chicago Quantum Exchange is a big idea of bringing the best of our scientists together with scientists from Chicago, and now I'm very pleased that Purdue has joined that ecosystem, as well as University of Wisconsin, and I think Northwestern is a part of it as well. And so this was the first place-based strategy to build this massive laboratory on the University of Illinois, University of Chicago's campus, to really help create opportunities for these world-renowned scientists to have collisions, if you will, to be together in one place to help facilitate, cutting-edge ideas and how those ideas come to fruition. I'm not sure. I think the building is almost done, isn't it, Paul? A couple more years, okay. Well, it takes a long time to build a building of that magnitude and that price, I might add. But it's a good example of how we must work together, folks, if we're going to find sustainable, impactful solution. And if, in fact, this country is going to be the place and this region is going to be the place through where innovations in quantum and quantum computing, it will run squarely through this region. And the only other one I mentioned, and I'll mention this briefly, is that some of you may have heard the same governor that funded the Capitol project just recently announced a $500 million project called the Illinois Quantum and Microelectronic Park that's going to be located just on the Lake Michigan to the south off Lakeshore Drive. This is a big fundamental idea of bringing all the assets together like PsiQuantum and other players. We have University of Chicago as a partner, Northwestern University, community colleges, other smaller state universities who've come together. We've come together on that site with PsiQuantum and others with about $280 million of support via DARPA to really, it's going to be a quantum proving ground. We know theoretically quantum works, but the biggest fundamental issue about this big idea is whether it can work at scale and where that can become the norm, whether or not quantum computing can replace binary computing. And we believe that there's more than an outside chance that it can, and we're just deeply humbled that the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign has been asked to lead this initiative. And Deborah, I want to add why the governor asked us to do this. I think he asked us to do it because as a land-grant university, we have demonstrated the ability to work and partner seamlessly with others. And we've done it several times in the last 5 to 10 years. And he knows that we will build a partnership that's necessary to move this critically important work, because this is going to be a game changer. And that's how we're looking at it.
Paul, let's continue on partnerships, but the quantum engagement and leadership. And what's Argonne's role, and how are you, as the head of a great national lab, going to also ensure that capabilities from other national labs are going to continue to this as well?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm pleased to add to the conversation Chicago Quantum Exchange, which has been mentioned a few times. We're welcome as well, I should say, to Purdue. Really pleased to have you part of the team at this point in time. There are over 50 different organizations, really, that participate in the Chicago Quantum Exchange. And so it's all about really how those collisions that Chancellor Jones mentioned in terms of bringing people together and making things happen. Certainly quantum is a hot topic. We talk a lot about the various aspects. Pretty excited right now, not only about quantum computing and what's occurring in terms of the description that Chancellor Jones provided in terms of the Illinois Quantum and Microelectronics Park, but also in terms of what's happening in quantum sensing, thinking about quantum applications in biology. I mentioned earlier there are 4 national quantum research centers in the Indiana and Illinois area. Argonne has responsibility for leadership of what we call QNX, which is really focused on quantum interconnects. We have the really exciting, I think, development there in terms of working with industry. We have 14 industrial partners. We have folks like JP Morgan, IBM, Verizon, and others. Really, so it's great to have early conversation between our scientists doing the fundamental science, really building our understanding of quantum technologies and how they work, and thinking about applications side by side with the researchers from the industry partners. And so really exciting in that way. We have 2 other national laboratories that participate with us in terms of the quantum QNext, I should say, and then really valuable relationships beyond that with many of the national laboratories in quantum information science. So really pleased in that way.
Among quantum here at Purdue and your involvement and leadership, and you're so strong in material science as well as the engineering. So share a little bit about your leadership in this space and coming into the big
Well, thank you,
partnership.
Deborah. My involvement is exactly nothing, but we've got great faculty colleagues here and great research staff and PhD students in quantum. As mentioned, Purdue is the leading university partner of one of the 5 DOE-funded nationally quantum centers. We also lead the NSF Industry University Partnership in quantum for workforce and innovation. Well, I tell you, interesting story. When I was a freshman at a university on the West Coast, I took this quantum mechanics class, and you wake up one morning, it says Professor Laughlin just won the Nobel Prize in physics for quantum or fractional quantum Hall effect demonstration. So I said, wow, that's kind of cool, you know. Maybe there's a lot of Nobel Prize winners. Every week they announce one. So anyway, so I walked into the class, and he's very happy, or I'm very happy. You know, this is just my 2nd week as a freshman, right? And then towards the end of the semester, he said, you know what, I'm busy writing my acceptance speech in Stockholm. I have no time to make up a final exam. I said, uh-oh, what does that mean? He says, everybody gets an A. I said, phew, wow, because I had no idea what you were talking about whole quarter long. And then there's one student, I was thinking of A+, you know, that student didn't survive very well. So anyway, so we're so, phew, easy A, there we go. I got an A in my first quarter. So ever since then, I tremble at the thought of quantum. And anything I see inner product, you know, I start, you know, shaking. So I have no idea what's actually going on. But according to my colleagues here, they told me that, look, there's quantum computing. By the way, Purdue, there are sort of 3 main flavors. The topological-based, the quantum computing. Along with Microsoft, Purdue is the international leader, right? And then there's quantum sensing, quantum communication, quantum detection, quantum cryptography. It's not just building quantum computer alone as well. And then this whole corridor physically can be manifested coming from Chicago down 65 to central Indiana, and maybe down to Crane as well. Eventually, you know, that's exciting too. And I say this is the kind of breakthrough technologies that we as a country cannot get our eyes off from, right? When we were at State Department back in 2020, we were thinking about chips. Why chips? Well, as Congressman just mentioned, because it's the foundation of all the other digital economy industry, and quantum has that potential for the future.
I want to follow up because you played a very important role as the science advisor to our Secretary of State, and not only representing us in international scientific fora, but understanding what's going on around the world. How do you see our strategic partnerships with allies and partners in quantum? Because with the encryption issues and the national security, it's very, very serious who we collaborate. I know Australia's a great leader in quantum, but could you share a little bit on the global dimension?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some countries, for example, I'll say Denmark and so on, they are very strong in Europe, part of Nordic country. You know, Sweden has a lot of collaboration with Purdue because of Ericsson, because of Saab. And they are pretty strong with the Wallenberg family supported initiative. This is not exhaustive list, but yes, Australia, and also Japan. So just, you know, as a shout out to your neighbor, you know, Chicago. So Paul Alvisatos and I, we were at the end of G7 last year in Hiroshima because of a IBM Google supported initiative for Chicago. and therefore part of this Indiana-Illinois corridor as well. On quantum, Japan is very strong over there. It's important to work with like-minded countries for sure. And if you think about also the application of AI, I know AI is sort of embedded in the chips part of it a little bit. You need chips to make AI, but AI is also critically important to make sure we work with like-minded countries and companies. And AI for us in Indiana, mentioned this too under Secretary Lucasio when I visited with her before, is that we take this unique angle here in this corridor, and that's physical AI. The bytes of AI meet the atoms of what we make, what we grow, and what we move, right? The agriculture, the manufacturing, and the transportation industry. And make no mistake that there is a lot of important sensitive information when you have physical AI, because now the bytes are actually moving things, making things, growing things. So it is part of our national security conversation as well.
Thank you, and I'll just mention, that the Council on Competitiveness, through our longstanding group of chief technology officers, we have a longstanding bilateral partnership with both Australia and Japan, and they're very keen to have a meeting here and then in their countries around this theme of, actually, they kind of watch what we do, and they love the topic of chips, qubits, and molecules. So at some point, maybe we could come back and all do that together with our close partners. Well, in the time we have, I want to save, for one last lightning round of whatever you all want to share with us in terms of your recommendations of going forward. But since we were talking about quantum and entanglement, let's talk about the entanglement of chips and quantum with biosciences and the relevance of that to this triad of the triple helix in this area. So maybe I'll start with you, Chancellor, with your background. We're talking about the bioeconomy, biomanufacturing. It's touching every aspect, every industrial sector. How does this all fit in together from your perspective?
Well, I think it fits in critically, in a very critical way, because this focus on, quantum and chips and the work that we do in the biosciences is very close to an initiative that we've started that I think all of us need to put greater emphasis on, and that's the impact of the research in the biosciences and how that can directly improve health outcomes. I mean, it's all about trying to build a healthier society. And this is one of the areas that I did mention that we've also had very outstanding success, if you will. And again, the common theme you'll hear from me is collaboration. And this is the Chan Zuckerberg BioHub that the University of Illinois, University of Chicago, and Northwestern partnered on to, I think we beat out, 38, 40 other 3 university teams to bring this to the region. I think most of you know the first one that Priscilla and Mark stood up was out in California and involved 3 leading universities there. And we had an opportunity to compete about 2 years ago. And again, because of the great sense of big problem, big opportunity, don't try to do it alone, we formed this seamless partnership with University of Chicago and Northwestern University to not only draft but create the BioHub, the Chan Zuckerberg BioHub in Chicago, which is up and running now. And this is a new approach to doing research, because it's not just like they give you the money, $250 million, and just spread it across the university. You have to create a whole new infrastructure. Over in Fulton Market, there's a building that has the laboratory, this LLC that basically runs the BioHub. And it's all about leveraging our expertise to be able to make very sensitive measurements at the cellular and tissue level in order to be able to diagnose, but not only diagnose, but treat and hopefully cure diseases. This particular initial focus of the BioHub is going to be focusing on elucidating the mechanism of inflammation. You know, how does the inflammatory response act? And when I was a young man, I didn't worry about inflammation. It was only when I banged my thumb with a hammer while I was growing up on a farm in southwestern Georgia. But now I'm reminded each and every day that inflammation is with me. And I can tell you, so I take particular interest that we have a group of, again, 3 universities and others working together in Chicago. And the first project is going to be on elucidating the mechanism for the inflammatory response. That becomes important because it may not be lost on some of you, but I was surprised to learn that probably about 50% of deaths are not necessarily due to the disease, but due to the inflammatory response. So I mentioned that not as a bragging point, but that's one of the things we always try to, we couch our remarks and that we're not bragging. And Mung, I love what you said in your intro, because it's not bragging if it's true. We have this amazing excellence that we create when we come together. And we're very, very excited about what this BioHub is going to be doing, very, very excited about what we are doing. Just think about a molecule maker lab that we are utilizing now to try to screen drugs for cancer. Just think about that with quantum capabilities. It's going to be huge. It's going to be really transformative. And so it fits in, all of this fits in very nicely with our focus. I think some of you know we started the first engineering-based college of medicine in the world. And all of this fits very much into our desire to create a different kind of academic health center, one that's driven by competition, one that's driven by other kinds of deep technology-driven strategies to basically change how medicine is taught, how medicine is practiced, and to produce these physician innovators that I think is going to improve health outcomes for decades to come.
Thank you, Robert. I'm going to take an extra minute here and turn to you, Paul, because the advanced photon source has always been an incredible tool for biosciences, but also with Aurora and protein folding and all the things you're doing. So comment on the biosciences entanglement, and then I'm going to ask each of you for just one comment on radical collaboration before we conclude.
Yeah, thank you very much, Deborah. As you mentioned, the Argonne hosts the National User Facility called the Advanced Photon Source, used by some 6 or 7 users from across the world on an annual basis, really to help them drive their science and leading to new discoveries and improvement in technology. Just upgraded the facility, which I won't take the time to talk about right now. A fantastic investment by the U.S. taxpayers and its capability. But I think in terms of where we might go from here, really I would say 2 ideas I would put into the conversation. And one is, let's build on what we have and really leverage the capabilities we have collectively. I think bioimaging is a great need within the region, in an area that we'd like to really think about partnering with both Purdue and the University of Illinois on really what we might do. It might lead to further the understanding of the human brain. It could certainly work in terms of adding value and drug and therapy design, coupled with our great computational capabilities across the complex. Plant resilience and food security is another topic that this idea might really help lean into and really drive in terms of further discoveries. And really thinking about sequencing of organisms and really understanding structure and the relationship to function, I think is really, from a fundamental standpoint, is really exciting in terms of possibility. The second idea I would put into the conversation is really, let's address health disparities. I think the region that we represent, there are health disparities present, and can we work together in some way to bring understanding and effectively address those so that we all have greater equity in terms of access to health care and also in terms of our personal health.
Thank you, Paul. Mung, radical collaboration. You're already doing it, but let's go forward.
2 quick ideas here. One is One Health. We talked a little bit about molecules, right? But yes, molecules can be used for how human, animal, and plant health interact together and together with their environment. And this is one of the 4 initiative pillars at Purdue University. We've got amazing leaders, including, say, Phil Lau in drug discovery, many drugs, including Pluvicto. And by the way, thanks to the Bayh-Dole Act, by coming from here in Indiana, that we have the ability to incentivize inventors like Phil Lau in the area of One Health. Now, second is, I want to entangle back to job creation. That is particularly important if we want to fulfill that vision that Chancellor Jones just outlined, a brain gain here, brain gain in this great part of America, but nobody is going to stay behind to be underemployed. So we need a lot of jobs, good salary jobs, and also jobs within a whole cluster of ecosystem so that they dare to stay here. Let's always connect whether it's chips, qubits, and molecules back to the task of economic growth here.
Thank you. And people. People, people, people. Chancellor. Last.
I'll save you some time. I think everything I've said today has been prime examples of radical collaborations, things that we do that are kind of out of the norm for higher education. Yes, as faculty members, we used to collaborating across disciplines, and one of the things we're very proud of at Illinois is that we are truly a multidisciplinary university. 16 colleges, but 10 multidisciplinary institutes. And so this is the prime example of how we must work together. And as I said before, this collaboration across different sectors has to be the way to the future, and we have to do it at scale.
Thank you. Paul. Last word.
Well, thank you. I'm really just honored to be here and privileged to be part of the conversation. Really looking forward to strengthening the relationships across the 3 institutions. And thank you, Deborah, for the forum.
Thank you. Well, let me thank this outstanding group of leaders. I think you've set the stage for our discussions today, and we certainly will build on this theme of the entanglement of chips, qubits, and molecules, and the radical collaboration that's already underway. And thank you again for your leadership, and thank you, President Chang, for hosting us here at Purdue.
Boiler up.
Very grateful.
Thank you.